Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for making time to join us today. My name is Iman, and I am with the Talent Solutions domain of Human Resources, and I serve as your Staff Association Chair of Marketing and Communications. I'm honored to be your moderator for today's Staff Town Hall. We have a group of panelists here today to provide updates on our operations for campus health and safety, and we'll have a few updates from HR. And of course, we'll hear from our Staff Association. At the end, we'll be here to answer your questions. Some of your questions were submitted during the staff town hall registration. However, please feel free to use the Q&A window to submit additional questions for our panelists today. This webinar has live closed captioning available in two ways. First, you can click on the closed caption button at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitles, or you can click on the link that has been provided in the chat. To start, we'll hear from Dr. Robert Chip Schooley, Professor of Medicine, and Dr. Angela Scotia, Interim Executive Director of Student Health and Wellbeing, to talk about campus health and safety.
Thanks very much, Iman, and good morning, everyone. We have a few graphics we'll share with you, starting with this one. This is a graphic that we usually start this section with, just to give you a sense of where things are in the US. And the bottom line is that things are finally beginning to get better. The BA.5 Omicron wave that picked up in late April, early May, and carried us through the summer is now beginning to wane in the US, with about 20% fewer cases now than we had at its peak 3 or 4 weeks ago. Next. In California, we're seeing the same thing. In fact, the drop is even more stark in California, with cases declining throughout most of the state, as I'll show you in just a minute. Next. If you look at the left slide, which are the data, the county case risk data from about 3 weeks ago, you can see that California was primarily in this highest tier of risk, orange. But you can see by the end of last week, by August 11th, things have gotten much better. And San Diego County and much of Southern California and Northern California had dropped into the mid-risk group in yellow. And Nevada and Arizona also saw major improvements. So things are getting better throughout this region from the standpoint of new cases of COVID as the BA.5 wave begins to wane. Next. Now, most of what we see in San Diego, these are data from Rob Knight's group, showing the distribution of variants in the wastewater at Point Loma. And you can see that almost 90% of what we're seeing these days in San Diego County remains BA.5, with a little bit of an earlier variant, BA.4. And this will be important when we get to talking about vaccines in a few minutes. Next. The hospitalization rates are also declining. They peaked at almost 500 cases at the end of last month, and have continued to decline, and now are about 350 cases. They're down about 30%. Next. Where are things going? We often look at the wastewater at Point Loma to give us an idea about that. And what you can see here is that things in Point Loma peaked about 2 weeks ago and have been declining since that time, suggesting that we're going to continue to see an ongoing decline in the new case rate here in San Diego County. Next. Case count positivity rate among students on campus remains quite low, as it does among campus employees, around 5 to 5.5%, quite a bit lower than in San Diego County as a whole. But as you can see in San Diego County, the positivity rate has been steadily declining over the past 2 weeks. Next. The case rate among students on campus of COVID-19 has also been gradually declining. Things peaked toward the middle of July. And over the last few weeks, we've seen a gradual decline and stabilization, with about 2/3 of the cases remaining off campus. These are the individual days shown in a histogram format. And next, this shows you in a slightly different format Next. Oh, I'm sorry. This is fine. I apologize. This is the current risk matrix for UC San Diego that was updated last week. You can see while we still have a fair amount of virus in the wastewater, some of this is because we're now allowing people to isolate in place. Many of the metrics that were redder in the past have begun to turn yellow. The San Diego case rate is still red on this metric, but the one we just received this morning for this week has now turned yellow. So again, overall, things are continuing to improve, which is something that we had hoped would happen as things moved on. Now, you may have heard that there are new vaccines in the offing. The United Kingdom has approved the first dual vaccine that is directed at both the original Omicron, the original variants, and the Omicron variants. The British one, however, is directed at one of the earlier Omicron variants. The US hybrid vaccine, which will be available beginning in September, but probably more widely in October, will be based on both one of the original strains of virus, but more importantly, the BA.5 strain of Omicron, which will make it nice that we'll be able to augment people's protection against currently circulating strains, the one that we showed you. Continue to encourage all of you who aren't up to date on vaccinations, however, to remain up to date. This is the best way to mitigate the severity of disease should you get infected, because this variant remains highly transmissible. Next. Now let's just turn our attention to monkeypox for a couple of minutes. We've talked about some of this before. Monkeypox is primarily spread through lesions on the skin that when they come in skin-to-skin contact with someone else. The virus can also be shed from those lesions onto bedclothes and into clothes and can be transmitted that way, but most of it is spread by direct person-to-person spread. The incubation period for this disease is between 5 and 21 days, which is much longer than COVID. And this is important because if you know that you've been exposed, you can get vaccinated within 4 days of exposure. And
it appears that Dr. Schooley has frozen. How about if we skip ahead to the campus health and safety slides, and we can return to monkeypox if Chip is able to rejoin us.
That'll work fine. Let's go to the COVID part, and then we'll weave in some monkeypox. We'll come back and I'll sort of do some campus monkeypox comments afterwards. I think that'll be great. Hopefully Chip will reconnect. If not, I can go backwards and I can cover some of Chip's slides. So let's stay focused on COVID for a minute. And there are basically some things that are very, very similar to when we last spoke. And then there are some updates, particularly on isolation quarantine. But in terms of the campus requirement, the UCOP mandate for vaccination, that remains in place. And let's review the definitions. Again, fully vaccinated means you've had the booster if you're eligible, which most people are eligible for at least the first dose. And in fact, everybody's eligible for the first dose. Even these students who had WHO vaccines can get a booster as well. So you don't get protection immediately. It takes about 7 days, right? So that's when you're fully vaccinated. If you're not, if you haven't had a primary series, if you haven't had a booster and you're eligible, or it's been less than 7 days, you're not completely vaccinated and you should comply with twice weekly testing. Next slide. Now, in terms of the boosters, first dose boosting is eligible and required under the mandate for all of the US administered vaccines. So Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, you are supposed to get a first dose to meet the requirement of the mandate. The second dose, if for those over 50 and immunocompromised, is not required under the mandate, although it is a recommendation. And we encourage everyone to take advantage of that. As to the new second booster with one of the newer booster vaccines, that is likely to come about in the fall. When it moves to a clear recommendation, then the mandate will bring it under the auspices of the mandate. For now, it's not there yet, but stay tuned. When we do get this fall, which would be great to have a broader booster that covers more of the strains that are relevant, it may come under the mandate. We'll keep you posted on that. We will continue to offer vaccine as well as boosting through the student health team on campus. Now, there will be a move in location. It's going to move from the Price Center on September 1st to Rec Gym, which is right next to Main Gym. So we're giving back the students Price Center space. They need their space back, but we're going to continue to provide testing as well as vaccination. This will be for COVID vaccination. Monkeypox vaccination for employees will be through primary care. There's not a plan to develop a monkeypox vaccination program when we get more vaccine, and there's a very limited supply, but as it becomes available, we'll be able to provide care for the students because through student health, but employees will go through primary providers for monkeypox vaccine as they become eligible for vaccination. Post-exposure vaccination right now is being administered through the county for monkeypox. So going back to COVID, once you become eligible, if you're a healthcare worker, you have 15 days to get that boost done. If you're a student or employee, you have 30 days. If you recently had COVID, that gets extended by 90 days. These are all the same rules we had in the spring and the summer. And if you've been approved for a primary vaccination exemption, medical or religious, that also covers you for boosters. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, testing requirements. We still have, if you're not up to date with your vaccination, which means boosting if eligible, you have twice weekly testing. Residential undergrads, we're already planning for our new fall arrival, and we've been doing this through the summer as well. When they arrive, they're tested prior to getting their key to enter into the rooms, and they get tested on day 5. Those living in graduate housing test within 24 hours of arrival. Remind everybody, regardless of vaccination, if you start to develop symptoms, put on a mask. Could be COVID, could be something else, but a mask will help. And then get tested. If you've had COVID in the last 30 days, you don't need to test. But if you have new symptoms and it's been more than 30 days since an infection, we do recommend you retest. If you've been exposed, we test on that day of notification that you've been exposed and you're aware that you have had an exposure, and on day 5, and that is regardless of vaccination. Wastewater. Continue to take advantage of the wastewater signals in the buildings that you work, live in, do research in, study in, and test. The vending machines are available throughout campus. We will be bringing all of the residential vending machines on this Sunday, August 21st, because our RAs and HAs are moving back onto campus. So we'll begin repopulating all of the campus undergraduate residential buildings. So there'll be a full array of vending machine sites. It'll be on the RTL website. We're doing once a day pickup. Get your sample in before 2 p.m. Most of the time, you're going to get your results that night. And remember, don't use your identity to test for others. Make sure you capture that barcode because that's how you know it's your sample. And the systems are working very well with rapid turnover of results. So vending machine system remains intact and working really well. Also consider some personal responsibility. If you're going to be visiting vulnerable individuals, test before you go to see your elderly friend or someone who may be under chemotherapy. If you've been traveling or been to a large event, big wedding, test afterwards, test day 5 afterwards. So be on top of your own risk and think about those you spend time with and try your very best to minimize the chance you'll bring this infection to someone else. Next slide. Masking requirements. So the masks are super effective. They work really well. Take advantage of masking. KN95 or N95 are the best masks that we recommend that. If you need and you don't have that, you can do a surgical mask with cloth covering, what we call double masking. Departments can order mask supplies through Oracle, no problem. That's how you'll get your mask at work. Masking is required in the classroom, the clinical setting, so student health, price center, CAPS, our price center where we're testing, not all of price center, but all those clinical areas we still need to mask, and campus transportation. We also recommend and encourage indoors if you're with a larger group and you want to, please mask. Don't hesitate to mask. And outdoors if you're in a crowded setting, especially if there's prolonged close contact in that outdoor setting. So think of your mask as your friend, a great reduction. You don't have to wear it all the time. Just be very thoughtful of the surroundings and who you're with. And if there are a lot of strangers or it's the folks that you hang around with and know quite well, you may be more comfortable not masking. Next slide. Isolation requirements. We got some changes here and it's a little bit tricky. New CDC guidance came out. So in this is regardless of your vaccination status. Once you have an infection, we treat the infection, right? So when you get your first symptoms, or if you don't have any symptoms, but you have a test that shows you have COVID, that's day 0, okay? You then have to wait until after day 5. If you don't have a fever and your symptoms are gone or improving, and we recommend a negative rapid antigen test, you can come out of isolation, but you still need to mask. This is really a very important part of this. That doesn't mean you go back to everything as the same, but you no longer need to stay isolated from other individuals, but you do need to mask. And the recommendation, if you have access to testing, is that you do 2 tests, one, the first one, and then 48 hours later, a second one. Then you no longer need to mask, except when our campus rules require masking. So as an example, I have a negative test on day 6. I'm able to come out of isolation. I still keep my mask on around others. I do another test on day 8 and it's negative. Now I can go about masking as if I were without a COVID infection. So it's really important to keep a supply of rapid antigen tests around. They're readily available. Take advantage of them and take advantage of our PCR tests. They're wonderful. The rapid antigen tests are great once you've been infected. If they say you're negative, then you're negative. Where the rapid antigen tests have a little bit of vulnerability is in the very early phases of an infection. So early on, they may be negative and may take a day or 2 to convert. So we recommend you do the PCR, or if you're off campus and only have a rapid antigen test, do a second rapid antigen test if your symptoms are persisting. If you get sequential negative rapid antigen tests, then your symptoms are probably something else. So all of the testing, which is so readily available now, really allows you to manage your own behaviors. And we're looking for individuals to self-manage much more than all the public health measures that we had before. And that's why we can move around now and we can enjoy a more normal life. For employment after COVID, you need to send a picture of your rapid antigen test along with your campus ID to COM and they will clear you. So that's a little bit of a change. Before we had provider observed rapid antigen tests. So a little bit of change here about isolation. Next one is quarantine. And quarantine is when you've had an exposure. We do not have the same degree of contact tracing. So part of it is going to be individuals letting those they've spent close time with notify them, but we're relying more on that. The app, the California Notify app, is another good tool for that to know if you've been exposed. The day you've been exposed is day 0. Recommendation is that you mask around others for a full 10 days. You monitor for symptoms. You get any symptoms, you should test. And then if you should test on notification. So you find out, test right away, because it can move very quickly. This new variant moves quickly. And then test day 5 after exposure. If that's negative, continue the masking. And by day 10, you're pretty much out of the woods with that. So it's a little change. It's no longer the unvaccinated having a different quarantine strategy than the vaccinated. So things are getting, in many ways, a lot simpler. So Chip, I covered a bunch of COVID and we thought we'd go back to you for the monkeypox, and then I can briefly just mention any campus monkeypox plans.
Sounds good. Sorry for the internet instability. So I'll be relatively brief. We've seen a monkeypox outbreak pick up in the initially in Western Europe and then in the US starting early in the summer. And the number of cases in California has continued to rise relatively rapidly. Most of the transmission is from skin to skin contact but it can also happen if skin lesions shed virus, for example, into clothes that people share or into bedclothes. People who are in a household but are not in close contact, in other words, aren't touching skin to skin, are at much lower risk than, for example, in a situation with COVID. Exposure really is more of an intimate contact. Sexual transmission is common because when you have sex with people, there is a lot of skin to skin contact. Next slide, please. What do the lesions look like? They can be relatively nondescript initially. You can see in the lower left panel, it looks like a little papule, but then they gradually spread and are seen in other parts of the body in showers. They often appear first at the site of inoculation where the skin has contacted the skin of an infected person, and then you may see a dissemination to other parts of the body. People who have monkeypox often have fever and feel bad, headaches and swollen lymph nodes. The lesions can stick around for 2 to 3 weeks and take up to a month to heal over. And this is important because you have to remain in isolation until the lesions heal over, which is one of the concerns about both employment and school. This is a much longer isolation period than COVID and can be extremely disruptive, which is one of the reasons it's really important to try to avoid getting it. Next. As I said, this was first noted in Western Europe, has spread to the US. We're now at just over 12,000 cases in the US, with 170 cases in San Diego, 1,300 cases in California. Next. This is the global spread. You can see the US has surged to the largest, highest incidence country in the world now over the course of the last couple of weeks. And we know from wastewater monitoring that Rob Knight's group is doing at Point Loma that the number of cases in San Diego County is rising relatively rapidly. Next. Distribution in the US, New York is first, California is second, reflecting our population sizes, but it clearly is something that has spread more rapidly than many people anticipated at the beginning of this of the outbreak. Next. Now, people who are at higher risk medically are women who are pregnant. This can cause morbidity both for the mother and for her neonate. It can pass through the placenta. Immunocompromised people, people who have eczema can also be significantly impacted. And if it gets inoculated into eyes, it can cause keratitis and blindness. So it's not a trivial disease, although the mortality rate is quite low. Next. Avoidance of contact with infected people is the best way to prevent getting the disease. There are 2 vaccines available. The one, though, that we want to use most often is a vaccine called Imvamune, made by the company called Jynneos. It's a vaccine that has fewer side effects. It has to be given in 2 doses, several weeks apart. It's been in short supply, but because we've learned that it can be given at much lower doses than initially planned, the available dosing has been stretched out, and much more vaccine will be available in September and October. The ACAM vaccine is made very much like the old smallpox vaccine. It has significant side effects and is probably best avoided unless it's really urgent to be vaccinated and you can't receive the Jynneos vaccine. People who've been exposed sexually in particular should be vaccinated within 4 days of the exposure, but you still get benefits up to 14 days after exposure. As we get more vaccine available, I think people who may become exposed are going to be people who should really consider getting vaccinated. Right now, it's mainly being targeted to people who have known exposures. Next. There are 2 drugs available right now, TPOXX or Tecovirimax. Viramat is the drug that is currently available through the CDC and available through the UCSD Infectious Disease Division, the Student Health Service. If you have doubts about this virus, please contact the appropriate healthcare access point for yourself and discuss receiving tecovirimat. So let me turn this over back to Dr. Sosha, who will say a few things about the isolation process for monkeypox.
Yeah, so for monkeypox, again, employees will be managed through their primary care providers, just like any other health illness of the past, not like COVID. So it'll be a little different. But for students, we have the ability to see our students at Student Health, safely see them, make the diagnosis, as well as provide the treatment. And we've been working with the health system as well. And there'll be post-exposure treatment for close contacts through public health right now. Because of the very limited vaccine supply. As vaccine supply were to increase, we'll make it available to students based on the criteria for vaccination. For students living on campus, we have a team that's been working together on all the protocols, and I'm real comfortable that we're going to be able to handle a student should we have a case on campus. I think what's important to realize is that other students living in an apartment off campus or in a suite on campus are not considered close contacts. They are like household members. They do not need to quarantine, and the risk to them is very low. And so we will be providing them with instructions and guidance on what to do in that setting, as well as some enhanced cleaning for the areas. So we're going and finalizing all of these protocols, getting them in front of the chancellor and the cabinet. But I think we're in very good shape with the working team to handle any monkeypox infections in our student body should they occur. And I think we want to be reassured this is not as transmissible as COVID. This is a very different disease. And so we'll answer questions about it because I know it's on people's minds. Thanks. I think we've caught up with our original plan, and we can go on to the next section. Oh, well, I forgot about this one. Slide, the continue to deal your, forgot about that slide. Continue to deal your SMPTE screener. The thumbs are still working. The criteria, all the infrastructure behind that, the IS systems are all in place. So thumbs are still in place and take advantage of them.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Schooley and Dr. Scotia. We appreciate you for your helpful guidance and up-to-date information. Next, we will hear a few updates from Human Resources from Terry Winbush, our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Thank you, Iman, and good morning, everyone. So I hope you've had your coffee. I hope you're processing all this rich information that is being shared with you. So I wanted to provide initially some reminders for work related to COVID-19. Yes, it's still here. So do not ignore symptoms that you may have. And those symptoms, from what I'm hearing from a lot of folks recently, really mimic cold symptoms. So do not ignore those symptoms. Like Angela said, take a rapid test and take another rapid test the next day. And if your symptoms are persisting, take another rapid test. We know folks who don't test positive until they're a few days into COVID. And if you are having symptoms, even if your test is negative, wear a mask, not just because you don't want to share COVID with people, but you don't want to share your common cold with people. And so that's a new place that we need to be really thinking about caring for our colleagues. And if you can avoid coming on site and your work lends to that and your operations lend to that and you have symptoms, please try to avoid coming on site. Do not come on site sick. If you are feeling ill, remember there are still leaves available. Talk with your HR partner in your department. Reach out to campus HR if necessary, but there are still leaves available. The emergency paid sick leave is still available through the end of September. And we will be talking more over the next couple of weeks on whether or not there will be any extension of that. The Cal OSHA leave still exists through the end of this year. If you have sick leave balances, you can use those. But if you are out of all of your leave options, please have your local HR partner reach out to campus HR and we will figure out what makes sense for you. If you test positive outside of UC San Diego because you did a rapid test at home, because you went through your provider or whatever the case may be, please report your positive test as soon as possible, as soon as you feel well enough to notify us. and do it via the testing support line. You can call that number that's on the screen, and that, thank you, Amy, for putting in the chat to everyone, or via that email address, but please notify them. It's important so that people can have awareness of what protocols they need to put in place and what support structures you might need if you are having symptoms and need some support. You'll also get a communication from the contact tracing team that either might be through your UCSD email, my chart message, and or they may call you. Either way, please respond to them as soon as possible. The quicker you respond to them, the quicker they can gather the necessary information, determine if there's been an outbreak in your workplace, if there are additional measures that need to be taken into account. And we want to make sure that those things are done for the safety and well-being of everyone that we work with. Remember, the red and yellow thumbs no longer trigger a phone call on their own. So if you get a red thumb or if you get a yellow thumb and you need support, please call the testing support line for that support. You also need to schedule a test if you get a red thumb and there's a reason related to symptoms, et cetera, where you've gotten that red thumb. And don't forget, you still have access to free testing on site. Like Angela said, the testing at the Price Center is being moved over to REC, but it's still on campus. We also still have more than 20 vending machines across UC San Diego that you can have access to. And if you get your test done and in before 2 p.m. Before the pickup, you'll get your results the next day, and you can test for your pod like I've done basically throughout the pandemic. So please access those free tests. Not all employers provide that as an option. And this is something that we are really lucky to still have access to at UC San Diego. You can also make an appointment for a provider administered test where you either drive up or walk up, like we said, over at REC or at the Athena parking structure. Next slide. So I always want to remind you to show grace to others. There are a lot of people going through a lot of things, and you might be one of those people. So remember to show yourself grace. Did you forget something that you once considered basic and you're like, oh my God, and you're having that Homer Simpson like, no moment? It's okay. And remember, there's a lot going on that your brain is processing every day. No one is expecting perfection, and neither should you be expecting perfection from anyone. Put support structures in place for yourself. Make calendar reminders, task lists. You could be like me, have 1,000 Post-it notes all across your desk. The key is to actually go back and read those Post-it notes and to actually pay attention to those reminders. So put structures in place for yourself that will really support you because there is always a lot going on. And I'm talking about not just at work, but in your entire life. You know, there are a lot of things that are going on. Do you need training and resources for the work that you do? Talk to your supervisor, talk to your HR partner, speak out about those things because people don't know unless you tell them. And supervisors, ask your folks and make the space so they feel comfortable letting you know that they need that support. Take time every day to check in on yourself. Are you in a great mood? If so, what contributed to that? Was it something great that you accomplished? You got to check something off the list. How can you replicate it? Or are you feeling down? Do you feel a little in the dumps? Take a step back. What is the root of it? Does something sad happen? Or are you just not getting enough sleep? What is the cause, and what can you do? Or what support can you get to address it? Have a thing that you know brings you joy near you all the time. For me, I'm a screaming singer in my backyard, so it's music for me. Have your favorite song ready on your phone, or if you have like a separate stereo for you, have your favorite song ready for you. If it's a quote, have it posted on your computer. If it's a stuffed animal, there's no judgment. It also could be a live animal that's just stuffed with, organs and things. Or a family photo, whatever it is that will give you the positive jolt you need, have it ready and nearby, because you just never know when you're going to have one of those moments where you're like, I'm just very tired. Like, I've read 47 emails today. I responded to 47 people and none of them are hearing me. And I just need that moment. And that's okay. Leaders, normalize taking care of your whole health. And that includes mental health. Like I said last month, and you'll hear me say it every other day if you talk to me that often, and good luck to you. but mental health is health. Please create the psychological safety to be asked about things and discuss things with your employees. They need to know that it's okay to be their full selves with you. And if you demonstrate your full self with them, that opens a door. Next slide. So I'm sharing with you all a sneak preview of the UC San Diego People Proposition, but this is not a secret. I call it a sneak preview because there will be more to come to fully flesh out this. So what I call this the flower. So we'll be fully fleshing out the full bouquet with additional information for you all. But for now, just know that everything we do and we will be doing is in respect of people, you know, the humans at UC San Diego. And all that we do will have at its foundation, the petals of this flower: equity, inclusion, care, growth, and purpose. Go ahead and take a screenshot. I know some of you are. It's okay. Feel free to refer back to it, ask questions about it, think about how it connects with your work, knowing that there is more to come that we will share. And speaking of more to come, next slide. The Staff at Work survey is live. So some of you have gotten that email. And for those of you who feel a little over surveyed, I'm sorry, but we really, really want y'all to engage. So we wanted to spend a little time today demystifying the point of the Staff at Work survey and sharing our refreshed approach to make engaging in the survey beneficial to all of you. And thanks to the over 1,200 of you who have already responded. So the yellow brick road, as some of us are lovingly calling what you see on your screen, and feel free to screenshot this too. Not that I could stop you, but I just want to give you that permission. So right now the survey has gone live. There are folks in your departments or VCs who act as survey ambassadors. So they're the people who curate all of the list of the folks who should be getting the survey and all the things. And a big shout out and thanks to them, because that's not like little work. It's a lot of work to get all that information over to our colleagues in OSI so they can send out the Staff at Work survey. So you'll all take the survey because you're all inspired now and you're feeling excited, but you'll be more inspired when I'm done. And you're gonna take the survey, not when you're feeling like euphoric, but also like not when you're super mad after reading somebody's email. You wanna take it in sort of a mid space, because I want to know, we want to know what you really think. Like, what are your real thoughts about how you feel connected to the mission, how your department's doing on making you feel valued? We want to really know those things. And if you're in like a super euphoric, like super high, happy space, you might miss some moments. And if you're super angry, you're going to be angry on the survey. And we don't want either of those. We want the sort of middle you. So please think about when that's a good time and then take the survey, because we really appreciate your engagement. So what we plan to do with the information, this is what you want to know. So in October, once we have a lot of the information back from you all in the survey, we will, and I say we, it's the royal we, it's really OSI who does a lot of this on the front end. They identify thematic broad areas of strengths and opportunities for the various departments and themes across the entire campus. And so then in November, the plan is to launch an idea wave. So grounded in the foundation of the idea wave is that people proposition that I gave you the sneak preview of. Yes, go back to that screenshot. And so in that idea wave, we want to engage with you and empower you all to be a part of the solution. So we're going to ask around the themes that we've seen as strengths and opportunities from the Staff at Work survey, help to identify some things that we can do to address any thematic concerns, or to celebrate the wonderful victories that we've seen in the strengths of us as an organization. We'll have meetings with your vice chancellors to identify potential projects and initiatives that can be rolled out in celebration or in support of addressing what we've learned in the Staff at Work survey. And then HR will be reviewing the top practices for insights and scaling it out to the entire campus. The other thing that you all should know, and I know is a big question that comes up every year, is what happens when you do those verbatim comments? The verbatims come to me. So you're thinking, well, Terry, there's no way you're reading like however many thousands of verbatims come in. This is true. However, what we actually plan to do this year is looking at our high performing departments and our not as high performing departments, actually honing in on the verbatums in those areas so that we can find ways to provide resources and tools through campus and department tiger teams to implement some of the things that you share in the idea wave that's going to go out in November. So you see how all of this is going to be wrapping you up in that warm blanket, right? While you're still laying on the cool side of the pillow, but getting things to make your employment experience that much greater, because that's really the goal of all of this. So we'll be doing action planning in February and March. We'll be implementing the actions in March through the end of the fiscal year. And then we'll be gearing up to go right back to the beginning again of the Yellow Brick Road. But we will be coming to you at the town hall to celebrate our wonderful leaders who are doing awesome and are most mentioned. We'll come to you to let you know that we are putting in action plans based on what you share in the idea wave, et cetera, on our opportunities, so that you know that you're being heard and seen, and that we really want to make a difference in your experience. So please engage in the survey. I want record numbers of engagement this year. I'm very excited to hear from you all and know what your needs are and what your experiences are. So with that, I think I'm turning it back over to Iman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. We always love hearing your HR words of wisdom and inspiration to find joy and self-care. I love it. I always feel so refreshed after that. And hopefully we see a boost in that staff at work survey after this town hall. Next, I'd like to introduce Desiree Hennen, our Staff Association Chair, and Sarah Andrade, Staff Association Marketing and Communications Committee Member.
Thanks, Iman. Hello, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you again. Just a few quick updates from Staff Association. As you likely know, our staff summer celebration is coming up this Friday, our beloved annual tradition, and we're excited to bring it back to campus. Although tickets are no longer available online, we do have a very limited number of tickets that are still available on site on Friday. We will have a will call tent. So if you do want to try to grab one of those will call tickets, arrive early as they will go fast. And even if you don't have a lunch ticket, you're still welcome to come and enjoy the event. We're going to have live music and games and plenty of fun for everybody. The event is also right next to Price Center, so you're welcome to grab a meal there from one of our awesome vendors inside Price Center, and then you can come join us on the lawn and enjoy your lunch with your colleagues. So again, that's going to be this Friday from 11:30 to 1:30 in Town Square. We also have our Celebrate the Night event coming up on September 1st. These events are specifically designed to celebrate those staff members who work a non-traditional shift and basically keep our campus going when most of us have gone home. Registration for these events are done through your department. So if you are a late shift employee, reach out to your department for assistance to RSVP to Celebrate the Night. And those are my two updates. I look forward to seeing many of you in person on Friday to celebrate you all. And now I'm going to pass it to Sarah for some shines and shout outs.
Okay, great. Thanks, Desiree. So the Staff Association aims to unlock the authentic narratives of our dynamic staff. So today it's my pleasure to give a hearty shout out to some of our great people working here. So first up, shout out to Jennifer Lepek. Jennifer is currently working with UCSD Recreation, but was previously with the Department of Psychology. Jennifer is recognized by colleagues within the Psychology Department for her extensive knowledge and helpful leadership. And then next up, also want to give a shout out to Dory Thrasher. Dory works as an HR advisor with UC San Diego Health, but was previously with the college's business office. Dory is recognized by colleagues within 7th College Residence Life for being an amazing campus partner and helping that team with their hiring needs. Okay, and if you would like to submit a shout out to recognize a wonderful colleague, or if you would like to shine the spotlight on yourself and all the great work you do, visit our website at staffassociation.ucsd.edu. And finally, also follow the Staff Association on Instagram to see more of these shines and shout outs, along with updates about events and announcements. Our Instagram handle is on the screen. We're at UCSD staff, or you can use the QR code that you see on my screen as well. Okay, great. And I'll pass it back to Iman.
Wonderful. Thank you, Desiree and Sarah. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing folks in person this Friday. It's very exciting. And as Sarah mentioned, just stay tuned for more events, event updates on Instagram. And now it is time to answer some of your questions. At this time, I'd like to invite all of our panelists to turn their videos on. As you may remember, during the town hall registration, staff had an opportunity to submit questions for the panelists to answer. We've selected some of the most popular questions for the panel today. If you have a question now, please go ahead and use the Q&A window to submit additional questions during the session, and we hope we'll have time to address some of those as well. All right. Yeah, let's see what we have first. Okay, this first question is for Dr. Scotia. Will UCSD set up monkeypox vaccination sites?
I'm trying to clarify this in two ways. Employees will get vaccination through their primary care health system. If you have UC San Diego Health as your health system, you'll get it through that process. And they will be emailing and making it available based on the criteria by which folks can be vaccinated. This is not going to be, it'll be self-defined risk, higher risk for monkeypox. Those will be the people that will get the vaccine first, but it'll be through your health system. If you're a Kaiser, Sharp, Scripps, that's where you'll go to get your vaccine. Public health will be administering post-exposure vaccine. So they've held back some doses. So if it turns out you've been notified you were exposed, public health has vaccine for the benefit because it's highly effective in that setting. For students, when we have population distribution based on criteria, we will administer it at student health for our students. So a little different answer, whether you're an employee, whether you're a student. So it'll be where you get your health care, and students get their health care at student health.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Josh Kavanaugh. What options are available for staff that are working limited on-site hours to save on parking and commuting costs?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'll be candid. Nobody likes paying for parking. I don't like paying for parking. But the reality is we're a self-supporting entity for parking here on the campus. But paying for parking on days when you're not coming to campus, that's just no fun at all. So we really encourage folks, make the shift over into our daily parking program. You are going to save money if you do that, guaranteed. So you can, depending on the permit type you want, the A's are at $645, B's at $535. What I really want to highlight is those D permits that are out there, our discount permit and our Super Saver permit at just $4 and $3 a day respectively. And those are ones that we held constant right now, despite the increasing costs that we have to operate the parking program, because we wanted to give people more choice, especially during these times. The other thing that you can do is make the switch over to transit, and almost 1,200 of our colleagues are saving money every month with the support of our vice chancellors and the VC50 for Transit program. Really encourage you to check it out. That is open to all payroll deduction eligible employees, and you will save $27 a month or half price on your MTS pass. Or $27 off any NTCD or North County Transit District product. Thanks.
Thank you. This next question is for you, Jason. What is UCSD doing for disinfection and safety around monkeypox?
Yeah, great question. So a couple years ago, obviously for COVID, we implemented a ton of different safety measures, not only on the air side. We're still to this day running buildings in 24/7 mode, meaning just trying to circulate the air as much as possible, 100% outside fresh air wherever we can do that. So we're doing that on the building system side, but we also implemented a ton of cleaning procedures. We're hitting all, obviously, building, elevator buttons, front entrance door handles, light switches. So that enhanced cleaning is still in effect to this day. We've got a cleaner. It's a waxy hydrogen peroxide based product that has a SARS 1 minute kill time. So we've got a lot of equipment We still have teams that do COVID cleaning. And we checked with the EOC and they said everything we're doing for COVID, which we're still doing to this day, is good for monkeypox as well, with the latest information. So we're going to continue to do that as long as we're asked to do so.
Awesome, that's great news. Okay, the next question is for Dr. Schooley. How big is the risk for monkeypox from daily activities like shopping or going to the gym?
Right now, it's a very low risk. In theory, if you picked up a towel that somebody with monkeypox had used at the gym and it hadn't been laundered, it could be transmitted that way. In theory, if you jumped on a weight press bench that somebody had just gotten off with monkeypox, it could be transmitted that way. It's a good practice in gym settings anyway to disinfect equipment between use because of MRSA and other things that get transmitted in gyms. Monkeypox is no more transmissible, probably less transmissible and more fragile to cleaning solutions than MRSA. So if you're cleaning things for MRSA, you should be fine from the standpoint of monkeypox.
Thank you. Okay, another question for Dr. Schooley and Dr. Scotia. What are the plans for COVID boosters in the fall?
Well, there are people now who are over 50 are eligible for a second booster. People over the age of under 50 are eligible for their first booster. This hybrid booster that is being produced now is in theory going to be available in September. Things don't roll out to the entire country the day they become available just because of logistics having to vaccinate millions of people. So most people are probably going to end up getting vaccinated in September, October, some going into November, with a vaccine that will include protection both against the traditional COVID variants and against the more recent Omicron BA.5 variant. I would also encourage people not to neglect getting an influenza vaccine this fall. We're likely going to have a fairly busy influenza season. Australia, which has its seasons 6 months off of ours, for example, had a very bad influenza season this year. And that's because we went through the last two influenza seasons, mainly masked because of COVID. And now people are coming back together with less masking. And when that happens after 2 years off with no influenza immunity boosting in the population from natural infection and from less vaccination, we're set up for a really bad influenza year. So I'd encourage you to also get influenza vaccinations this fall as well.
And I think, Chip, we should probably expect that as it gets distributed out, it'll be available in multiple locations. So people will be able to get it through other primary care providers, other health systems, as well as our health system. We're going to maintain a site on campus for employees and students for a COVID vaccination. In pharmacies, CVS, I think it'll be more available and people will be able to get the vaccine. People wonder about the mandate, and it's going to be the language by which how strongly it is. Is it a requirement or just an option for folks? That will determine if it comes under the mandate. So more on that. So we first address clinically what's the best for everybody and the recommendation to get these boosters and the timing. I think people are wondering if you recently had a booster, should people delay? If I'm sitting here and I'm over 50, do I wait 6 weeks or do I get the booster now? Right? And then if I've had a booster, how long do I wait to get the dual booster?
Yeah, there really is no time constraint on when you get your dual booster after your initial booster. I have gotten my second booster since I had my 50th birthday a while back, and I'm pleased that I did because I had a house guest in the middle of the summer who came in with COVID, and I managed to pick up COVID myself, the BA.5 variant, and I had a temperature of 103.5 and felt pretty lousy for a couple of days. Had my last vaccination been a year earlier, I'm sure I'd have been a lot sicker. So I really think that getting vaccinated, keeping your vaccines up to date is a smart move, particularly if you're going to do some traveling. If you're going to go, for example, to Spain for a week and you haven't been vaccinated since last year, You don't want to get really sick when you're away from your healthcare providers and away from Paxlovid and care. So certainly don't go off the reservation without having your vaccines up to date. I would generally recommend most people over 50 go ahead and get their second booster now because we're not sure that it's going to be the time frame will be held up. There are often delays, and even if things are on time, by the time everybody gets vaccinated, it could be November, by which time we could be in the midst of another wave as people come indoors. So I wouldn't sit back and wait to get vaccinated. And I certainly wouldn't do that if you're planning on some travel or have any risk factors or people around you with risk factors.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice for everybody. So stay tuned. We'll keep these town halls up and we'll keep giving information as we learn more. And I think the commitment to try and keep everybody vaccinated and everybody as safe as possible is still there.
All right, thanks. Okay, next question. Terry, we got a good one for you. You ready? I recently switched departments. Should I complete the staff at work survey for my previous department or my current department?
That's a great question. And I thank the two of you who asked that in the Q&A to initiate that. So if you've been in your department for less than 3 months, go ahead and do the survey on your previous department. But don't miss an opportunity to share any concerns or insights with your current supervisor. If you have been in your current department for more than 3 months, go ahead and evaluate your current department. So I just love that y'all are asking that because that means y'all are doing the survey. So do it, do it, do it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, back to you, Dr. Schooley and Dr. Scotia. Does a previous smallpox vaccination protect you against monkeypox?
We think the level of protection is about 80 to 85%. So if you've been smallpox vaccinated, your risk for monkeypox is lower. And so if you're in the general population, I wouldn't go out and get a run to get a monkeypox vaccine. If you're in a situation where you are exposed to monkeypox, though, even if you've been smallpox vaccinated, I would go ahead and get vaccinated. Just because that 20% risk is not insignificant. And sometimes past vaccine histories turn out not to be accurate. So everybody was vaccinated up until about 1972 or so. So people over 50 generally got smallpox vaccines. Those under may not have, generally did not. And so you can count on, as I said, about 80% protection. But if you get exposed, I'd still go ahead and get the Jynneos vaccine as it becomes available.
Great, you can keep your mic on. The next question is for you, Dr. Schooley. What do you think the long-term outlook is for COVID? Will we continue to have periodic surges and do boosters every year?
I think we'll have waves off and on as the virus evolves. I think that as the level of immunity in the human population gradually rises from the kind of cycles of infection, each new cycle will be less severe than the previous cycles. How severe will they be? Well, it'll depend to some extent on how much a variant differs from what circulated before and how long it has been since that last variant came through and tweaked people's immunity, very much like what we're dealing with flu. This virus, this particular coronavirus, has only had about 2.5 years of experience with the human population and vice versa. I think while we are adjusting to this as a human population, staying up to date with vaccines is the best way to allow us to be boosted without getting sick, or with getting sick is becoming as having the fewest symptoms. In other words, we're all going to get exposed. I got exposed this summer, as I mentioned, and I'd been vaccinated twice, and I got sick, but not as sick as I would have been if I hadn't been vaccinated. So as this virus comes through, it'll come through with more and more transmissible variants. It'll be harder and harder to avoid it, and more important to keep your immunity up to date with vaccination. If you are vaccinated and get exposed, you get another boost from that exposure. so that you can kind of think about each experience with the virus as being money in the bank to protect you from the next one. And getting a bout of COVID on top of a vaccination is really a very effective booster shot. I'm not advocating going out and getting it, but what I'm really saying is don't hold back on getting vaccinated, thinking that if you get infected, you'll get better immunity. You won't. If you get primed with a vaccination and then get infected, that's when you really get great immunity. So please stay up to date in the meantime.
Great advice. And I love that all these questions are coming through and that we have time to answer them. So, Terry, another one for you. Is contact tracing still happening? Will I be contacted if I'm exposed to COVID or monkeypox on campus?
So contact tracing is still happening to some degree. So Angela mentioned this a little bit in her presentation. We have, shifted to the new normal of our operations. And that means we have gotten to the place where we have to be able to sort of function with COVID and its new friends for persisting into the future. So there is still contact tracing, but this is where, as I shared, make sure you're checking your emails because you may get an email survey instead of a phone call. Make sure you're checking your MyChart messages, right? Like make sure you have that all set up. Make sure you're checking those places and then responding to them as soon as you are feeling well enough to respond, right? Because that's how we're going to find out. But the other key thing is to communicate with your supervisor. If you are not comfortable communicating with your supervisor, communicate with your HR partner to make sure that they can talk to you about what leaves are available, but also so that they can work with our EOC in sending communications out to your department in case you were on site during your infectious period, so they can inform folks to go get tested. I know everyone's checking the daily dashboard to see if your site is listed on there. I know how much y'all enjoy getting the same email every single day, but please check that email or have that dashboard bookmarked because you will be, or maybe you won't be surprised at how frequently some place that you've been on campus might be listed. And just go get a free test because you know what? We have them. Every employer does not have that. So go get a test, monitor your symptoms, pay attention to how you're doing. The chancellor, he said it very passionately last week. I don't want anybody coming to work sick. So if they're out of leave, I need to know about it. So when I said, if you talk with your HR partner and you talk to campus HR and you don't have any leaves available, there's a reason I want to know that information because then we can talk with our chancellor about other options that might be available to you. Because some of you may not remember, it's been a minute, but our chancellor is the one who spearheaded offering COVID leave 2.5 years ago, which started it for the UC system. That's who we work for. So when I ask those questions, I mean it because we actually really care about making sure that y'all are taking care of yourselves appropriately. So take all of the advice that you're hearing. I mean, we have Chip and Angela, y'all. Like everybody doesn't have that either. So just saying that.
Yes, thank you. And keep that mic on because
I was just going to also say monkeypox is going to be primarily managed through county. We're not going to be using campus resources for contact tracing for monkeypox. They're set up to do it. Right now, they can handle it and they have the authority. So that's who would be making the call. And they're also able to let that contact know that, hey, come on in, get a vaccine because you're eligible for benefit to being vaccinated because you were exposed. So campus will not be doing monkeypox calls. I just want to reiterate that. So we're dealing with a different entity in monkeypox.
Great, thanks. That's super helpful, Dr. Scotia, for adding that in. All right, Terry. If I write comments in the staff at work survey, is it really confidential?
Thank you for asking that because that is a question that a lot of people have had. And I've had people say to me, oh, I don't put any comments because I don't want my supervisor to see them. The verbatim comments are sent literally to me. When I say me, y'all, I literally mean that OSI puts together like this whole Google Drive and they send it to me, like the human being of Terry Wimbush. And I have them I have them. So if your leadership or your vice chancellor even is asking for the verbatim comments to help them guide, creating programs, et cetera, then me and a member of my team actually go through and read the verbatim comments and sanitize them so that there's no identifying information. So if you say, I've been an employee here for 6 years and I just switched to this department 4 months ago, and when I told my boss, something very specific, like identifying about blah, 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 they so-and-so'd. Well, we're going to take out all of the front part and make it super generic and then just say, I have concerns about X. so that your supervisor and your leadership doesn't know it was you who said the thing. Now, if it's something super positive, we might actually, leave that in there for you. But for the most part, we sanitize that before it gets to your leadership so that you can feel safe in sharing your concerns. Also, it's really important to us to check to see the size of your department. So if your department's really small or your subunit's really small, so if there's less than 5 members on your team, they don't even break down the verbatims into that small group, just so you know, because it's just too easy to figure it out oftentimes, right? So then you get rolled into the larger group. And then even then, myself and the folks within HR in the HR strategy and policy employee relations group, we know a lot about a lot of the areas across campus. So if we feel like the area is relatively small, we will pull that out and send them only the rolled up hire and then still sanitize it. So we do everything we can to protect the confidentiality of you who is sharing the information while focusing on the themes of the information so that we can make positive change where necessary across the campus. So please comment, use this as a place to comment. And we will do everything we can to try and address workplace concerns that need to be addressed. So please do comment, know that we literally do everything we can to protect your information. So.
All right. I learned something new today. I did not know about the sanitizing process for Staff at Work survey. Very helpful. All right. Next question is for Josh and Desiree. Is there free parking for the staff celebration on Friday?
Yes, but only at the Hopkins parking structure. So we want you to come in. Those of you who are working remotely, please come celebrate with us. You can park at the Hopkins structure just during the duration of the event. If you're working a full day on campus, we ask that you please pay for parking and park in your normal location. Leave that space in Hopkins available for your colleagues that are coming in.
Absolutely. And just to add on to that, make sure that you do arrive early because Hopkins, of course, as any parking structure, has limited spaces. So you may arrive at 12:30 and it may be very full. So in those cases, there's other options and you would have to pay in those other places.
That is very exciting. So everyone, if you don't have a permit, you should be parking in Hopkins on Friday because we want to see you there. All right, Terry and Dr. Scotia, can we require masking for a specific event or activity on campus?
I can start. So I know y'all want to. Trust me, sometimes I want to, but no. Unless it is instructional settings on university transportation, clinical settings, right? That's where the masking requirement is still in place. For your individual team sort of meeting or whatever the case may be, you can encourage masking. You can model masking, leaders. You put your mask on, you know what automatically starts to happen? People are like, oh, let me put my mask on, right? So you can model behavior for your teams. You can have masks available in the room where the meeting is taking place. You know what that does for the people who don't have it handy? They grab a mask, they put it on. So really think about doing those kinds of things. Now for the larger events, that is all done via event planning. So there's a lot of things that they look through when they're planning the events. They work with the EOC, they work with our partners, right? To make sure that they're making the best decisions around the larger events. Like if the large event indoors, there may be masking requirements, or they may have rapid antigen tests available for people to utilize if they want to do that before they come into the event. If the event is large, but it's outdoors, they may just encourage you to have a mask and have rapid antigen tests available. So it really depends on going through that events process, because they will help guide you through that. But for your normal sort of team meetings, you're pulling the team together to do a thing, you cannot individually require that unless, so here's the exception. And you're like, Tara, there's always an exception. You don't have to memorize this. If you have an active outbreak in your location, meaning the EOC has identified your leadership that there's an active outbreak in your location, the Cal OSHA requires there to be masking in that outbreak location for those folks for 14 days. And they tell you from the beginning to the end, and it's 14 days from the last sort of exposure. So if someone else tests positive during that time period, that 14 days is going to keep rolling. Okay. So don't be like, but you told me a date. Okay. So that's when, you can mandate masking. There's also some protocols that we have internally that if multiple sort of work units under sort of the same leadership have outbreaks, we work with those leaders to then mandate masking for everything under their sort of purview. So we don't end up shutting down an entire sector of campus and not being able to like manage our operations. So we have some internal protocols for that too. But if you haven't heard from somebody who's, you know, official that you can mandate masking, don't go around mandating masking because you don't have authority to do so. Okay. All right. But like I said, model good behavior. Put your mask on. Other people put your mask on. I've seen it happen. I'm not making it up, y'all. I've sat in meetings. I've had my mask on. I've seen people come in and do the, oh, yeah. And then they put their mask on. And I'm like, I don't tell you to do anything, but I like it. I like it a lot. So
All right.
I can't add anything to that answer. That was perfect, Terry. Modeling is key, and don't be afraid to use a mask. Carry it with you at all times. You know, keep a stash of masks and do it on campus and off campus. Grocery stores, a lot of places when you're around people you don't know, better to have a mask on.
All right. Well, we've reached that time where we have time for one more question. And that last question is for you, Dr. Schooley. How long does having COVID provide protection from reinfection? And does that protection last longer if you were vaccinated before you got COVID?
The second part of the question first, yes. The more immunity you get boosted with, the longer your protection is going to last. And the stronger your immunity is when you get a vaccination or get infected, the baseline immunity, the bigger the boost is. So that answer is easy. The length of time you're protected is not something that the light goes off on day 43 and all of a sudden you're at great risk on day 44. It's something that gradually wanes. We think that people are generally pretty safe for the first 60 days and that they get to increasing risk at 90 days and further out. We know from the earlier days with the vaccination experience, the first round of vaccinations, people about 5 or 6 months out had lost a lot of their immunity. So it's a gradual process over time, but the higher your level of immunity to begin with, the longer it lasts. So generally we tell people for 60 days, you're pretty safe if you're immune competent. For 90 days, there's still quite a bit of protection, but after that, you should start thinking about worrying about wearing your mask and being able to pick disease up. Your illness won't be as severe, say 120 days out, than it would have been if you hadn't been vaccinated, you hadn't had COVID, but the level of symptomatology will increase over time as well. So it's a gradual decline, as many things in biology are.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. That's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank you all for tuning in and for your questions, and to remind you that we will do our best to answer everyone's questions by updating the FAQ section that will soon be on our webpage, and by posting a recording of this town hall as well. Hope to see you all on Friday. Bye, everyone.